Well, so we've been practicing, and mostly it was me, and the team included Jerry and the two Mitches. And, well, I looked at all the other charioteers, and I decided that we were definitely the best team. So when it came around to the actual race, I took the bet. The odds were fantastic, and I thought, well, we're going to win, so I used a week paycheck while the race is run. And, of course, Chuck Heston wins handily. And afterwards, he came up to me and he says, Lee, I admire the moxie, but you know in the script it says I win. And then he gave me an apple, scratched my ear, and called me a good boy. Now that man was class. That man was pure class. Can I get some water? Hey Frankensteins, this is a little bit different because not only do I know Ben-Hur and have seen Ben-Hur, I actually bought it 3 times now. I got this nice box set, and inside it's got the movie, and then it has the extras, and it also has the silent version. I put the Blu-ray in, so I bought it again for the Blu-ray, and now it's in this Warner Brothers box set. This one comes with a nice little booklet there. I already have that, so pretty cool. I don't think there's going to be too many surprises when we get to Ben-Hur. In 1959's Ben-Hur, Judah Ben-Hur, played by Charlton Heston, seems to have it all as a rich prince in first-century Judea. That is until he and his family are falsely accused of the accidental injury of the new governor. Ben-Hur's hatred for his childhood friend turned Roman officer Messala, Stephen Boyd, leads him on a journey of revenge from the prisons of Judea to the belly of Roman warships to the glories of Rome and back as a charioteer in the Judean circus. But is revenge enough, or is peace that is promised by a strange man what is truly worth fighting for? So this film, directed by William Wyler, has over 50,000 minor roles, 365 speaking parts, 45 principal actors. And what he did for the first time is that he made all the Romans very sophisticated in English, and all the Jews and all the plebes, they of course were played by Americans. They knew this was going to be huge. I mean, after the 10 Commandments, they looked for a different property, and that was Ben-Hur. And they asked everyone in Hollywood who had somehow misplaced a shirt to be in this movie. Burt Lancaster found the script boring. Paul Newman said that he didn't have the legs to wear a tunic. They asked Marlon Brando, Rock Hudson, and Leslie Nielsen, who was actually up for both parts of Ben-Hur and Messala. Then they offered the role to a number of muscular, handsome Italian actors who didn't speak English. And then finally, the one guy who really was interested in this was Kirk Douglas, and they turned him down in favor of Charlton Heston. As a response, he and Stanley Kubrick made Spartacus. Heston, besides proving himself as Moses in the 10 Commandments, also had the plus that from that movie he learned how to drive a 2-horse chariot. Now in this one, they need a 4-horse chariot, so he still had to do hours and hours of practice, but at least he had a little give there. To me, Charlton Heston is a dramatic actor, but not necessarily a dramatic actor. He is strong, he's very physical, he has a very strong presence. He also has sort of strange line readings and seems sort of out of place in just about everything. Real emotionally absent. He looks the part, and I guess the director and a lot of the producers were not really happy with the final results. On the other hand, Stephen Boyd is perfectly cast as Messala. Originally, William Wyler wanted to cast Heston, and like Heston, the guy had blue eyes. 2 things: to make them different, just on screen, he gave Stephen Boyd brown contact lenses. The other reason was, being Roman, he wanted to make sure that all the brown-eyed people were Roman as well. Then you had classically trained actors like Jack Hawkins, who's great as Quintus Arius. He played the Roman general and Ben-Hur's adopted father in the great galley scene. My favorite in this whole movie is Hugh Griffith. He plays Shekel Durham. He's the one that gets Ben-Hur to race the chariots at the circus. And he's the only one who really has a lightness to the proceedings. He's the only one that seems to be having any fun. They didn't use the regular MGM roaring Leo the Lion. They had it very quiet because you didn't want to go from a roaring lion into the nativity scene. I mean, we go all the way from the birth to the crucifixion of Christ in this movie, and it weaves in and out. The character of Christ is silent through this whole thing, and it seems like everyone took this to mean say every line with the most gravitas and reverence because God's watching. This film had many writers. One of the reasons for that was that they couldn't get everything to have a flow to it. Everything sounded like it was biblical, and they wanted it to sound elevated, but they didn't want it to sound preachy. The biggest writer that I knew was Gore Vidal. He wrote in the gay subtext with Ben-Hur and his childhood friend Marsala, and didn't tell Charlton Heston, just told Marsala to kind of play it as though they had been lovers. But also they had playwright S.N. Berman, they had playwright Christopher Fry, and then Carl Thurnberg, who was either the first guy hired or the last guy hired, but he's the only guy to get the writing credit. Wyler didn't really want to make this movie because it was so grand. He did want to go back to Rome where he had done pictures in the past, and he said, if you know what, if I can take down Cecil B. DeMille, I'm going to give it a shot. The film is based on the 1880 novel by General Lew Wallace entitled Ben-Hur, A Tale of the Christ, and that's the same title that they used in the original 1925 silent version. The chariot race is what people think about, but there's also the great galley scenes. Ben-Hur is in the bottom of the ship rowing, and how cruel Jack Hawkins is, and how cruel the things around him are, and how he gets away, and how when the galleys are crashed into, they use stuntmen that were actually amputees to give it a little bit more gore and realism by putting bones sticking out of where their limbs were amputated and blood soaked in that. Some of the ships were close to full size, some of them were miniatures, some of them are still hanging around at various places. Now, the chariot race. The arena was modeled on the historic circus in Jerusalem, so it was 18 acres and was the largest film set ever built at that time. And what was neat is that right next door to that is a track of identical size that was constructed so that they could train the horses and lay the cameras out so they wouldn't have to worry about using the entire set. The planning for just that segment, and it is about 40 minutes long, took nearly a year to complete. They had 78 horses. They built 18 chariots. Just at half all of that, so half the horses were used for practice, half of the chariots were used for practice. Each of these chariots was about 900 pounds, and when they used the chariots, they didn't have any kind of turn in the wheels. I mean, so how you got around corners was you just skid around the corners. You Roman drifted around everything. And Heston, who already knew how to drive a team of 2 and was an experienced horseman, still took about 3 hours of chariot driving lessons every day. So the scene took 5 weeks, over 3 months, filmed a total cost of about $1 million, required about 200 miles of racing to complete. And they said they used more film for what was on screen than any other movie, so that they shot miles of film for a couple feet of film that was actually seen. Ben-Hur was nominated for 12 Academy Awards and won 11. If you haven't guessed already, Ben-Hur is a wonderment to behold. The sets, the costume, the ships, the chariot, the grandeur of it all. This is a film that needs to be studied for generations just based on logistics alone. And luckily, so many things are well documented about the production. And for me personally, it hits all my trigger points. The things that I really enjoy when I'm looking at movies or books. It's history told through the eyes of a non-historical figure. You know, you take a fictional person and drop them in the middle of everything. Ben-Hur sort of Forrest Gumps around first century Jerusalem to Rome. So you have ancient Rome, you've got the Christian story, you've got from the Nativity to the crucifixion, you've got Tiberius, the Roman Empire, leprosy, galleys, a horse race, you got it all, and there's just a ton more in this. And yet I'm not a I'm not a huge fan. This film seems old, and not like 2017 old, but 1959 old, like it was old then. You know, and after that thoroughly modern Millie of North by Northwest that I just saw, this is a film that felt like homework. And like I said, except for Hugh Griffith as the Sheik, every line of dialogue is just so heavy. The movie feels even longer than its 3 hour and 32 minutes runtime. And that goes double for whenever Christ is on screen. All we get are reactions to him. And I'm guessing the awe and the wonder were right there, but doesn't play well for me. The film really does hit the brakes every time. It's just people talking or explaining. It's with a heavy heart that I am giving Ben-Hur 3.5 out of 5 amazings. So I guess now I feel like kind of a big man. Well, next week, I'm going to tell you a rip-roaring tale about how the West was won. Until then, I'm Uncle Tony.